En esta emisión especial de Index les compartimos la entrevista que el doctor Daniel Vigo le hizo al doctor Nandu Goswami, director del Instituto de Fisiología de la Universidad de Graz.
Hello, my name is Daniel Vigo. I'm the head of the Chronophysiology Lab at the Biomed Institute of Research from the National Research Council of Argentina and the Catholic University of Argentina. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nandu Goswami. Nandu is the director of the Institute of Physiology of the Medical University of Graz. Nandu, it's a pleasure for me to introduce you.
Thank you.
I know that you were born in India, but you work in Austria.
Yes.
You were born in India and you work in Austria. Can you please tell us all your journey from
Yes.
India to Austria?
Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me to come and share my research with you. As you rightly pointed out, I am originally Indian, but because my father was a professor in Africa, I traveled with him as a little kid, so did my primary, secondary, university as well in Africa, traveled around a lot of Africa as a doctor, so I was working with Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, and after that, so my area of research was always general medicine, trying to look at how we can improve healthcare in underprivileged populations, developing capacities. And, but I felt that there was a need to build up my education further. So I went to New Zealand, where I did my master's. And then after New Zealand, I actually moved on to Switzerland, where I did my PhD in cardiovascular physiology with a particular interest in why people fall. And of course, in New Zealand, I met my Austrian wife. So now I'm married and now I'm settled with my family in Austria. So that's why I'm in Austria now. And I started, like most people, as a postdoc, and then slowly moved up to an assistant, university assistant, and then became an assistant professor, and now I'm an associate professor, and since last year, the head of the Institute of Physiology in a big center that is called the Otto Lowy Research Center for Vascular Biology, Inflammation, and Immunity.
It's quite a long journey. So mainly your research lines are related with aging and falling. Could you please describe for us all your work in this area?
Right. Our main work was always, my boss, the laboratory that I joined in Austria, for example, was always looking at space flight. Now I find that particularly fascinating because space flight, the big problem with astronauts is that when they return back to Earth, many of them feel dizzy upon standing up. And that means that when they stand up, they almost feel like they're going to fall down. And many of them actually cannot stand up. Now, as being a medical doctor, this was particularly fascinating for me, that how can a super athlete, because an athlete is a super, an astronaut is a super athlete, how can they not be able to stand up? Something we do thousands of times every month. So what's this? So that led me to find out what's really is the problem. And the more we studied astronauts or young people, the more we found out that there's actually a connection with space flight and aging.
So please, are you saying that the astronaut is not a super athlete in fact, but is more like an old person? Is that what you are saying?
No, I think what I'm saying is that the astronauts are super athletes before they go into space, but when they come back, they may maintain their athleticism, but do not forget they train about 2 to 3 hours every day on the International Space Station. For example, now that's where we are. But even when they come back, most of them, now we're talking about 80% of the men, when they stand up, and just to do a simple sit-to-stand test, that means this movement of standing up, most of them are not able to complete this test. And 100% of the female astronauts are not able to complete this. We have previously published in this area, and this really made me to ask myself a question. Could there be analogies between space flight and aging? And so then we started getting interested in the area of aging, and we found out particularly that falls is a big problem in aging, as you're aware.
And you also are part of an European consortium that studies aging problems, particularly the problems of fall. What is your role in this big European consortium?
What we do is that there is a consortium that was created by the European Union. It's called European Innovative Partnership Active and Healthy Aging. Now there are different sections of it. For example, some sections deal on polypharmacy, administration, the aging process. I am actually part of the section that deals with falls. Because of my expertise in why people fall, I was invited to this consortium, and when I've been working with them for now many years, and now we realize that the astronaut problem that we are talking about, their inability to stand up, the orthostatic intolerance, is a big problem with older persons as well. And so now I work in this consortium. I'm one of the coordinators of this action group A2, which is fall prevention of the European Innovative Partnership Active and Healthy Aging. And we are trying, our main focus for my side is to understand what is the mechanism. Why do old people fall? And why do I think so is because we know, and this may again be surprising, but most of us who have older persons, families, relatives, or who have worked with older persons, you see that many persons will tell you that when they try to stand up, they feel dizzy. And my argument or my understanding is that I think most people are happy with their aging process, as long as they get their normal lives done. So if you're a golf player, you go and play your golf. If you're a rugby player, you just go and do your thing. If you're a runner, whatever you do, as long as you can do your normal thing. So I think people don't have a problem with the aging process, as long as they take their medicines and they continue their lives. But the fall, or the fact that they feel dizziness upon standing up, it's a very scary event, not just for the person, but for also the immediate family around it. And for me, this is the part that gets me interested in falls research. And since we have been researching this area, we have actually found out that up to half of the reasons why people fall is when they try to stand up from a lying position. So therein lies the analogy of the astronaut and the older person. And this is what we are trying to research. But as you understand just yourself, like you're a medical doctor, I'm a medical doctor, it's not just enough for us to understand that people fall, right? So what do we do about it? And so we are trying to develop countermeasures. In other words, how can we prevent that? And that was the focus of my PhD, preventing falls. And if we know that somebody is going to become unconscious at a certain point, can we do interventions like mental challenge, doing your hand grip, putting your hand in cold water? Could that help? And that's why we are fascinating in developing this area further. But over the years, we found that there is another aspect that is particularly disturbing. And again, there lies the analogy with space flight, because astronauts are super national heroes. You cannot always take bones and muscles from them. So how do you now try to understand what happens to an astronaut in space? So we simulate these models. Space agencies all over the world, from NASA to European Space Agency, and Canadian and the others, are all trying to look at what is the mechanisms. So how can we simulate space flight on Earth? And the current model that is used is actually lying in bed. In other words, 6 degrees head down. If you put your head down a little bit, just 6 degrees, your head is here, the legs are up, and if you do that, that's simulating the space flight kind of fluid shifts that happen. Because in space there's no gravity, fluid moves to the upper parts. The heart keeps on pumping against gravity, not knowing that you are in a... And so if people lie in bed for a long time, they actually lose their bone and muscles. Now, these are young people. But then I ask myself, what about in hospitals every day in the world? Every day in the hospitals, if you go to an acute unit, let's say an emergency unit, most of the people admitted are people who are 65 and above. And you're talking about, that's a big stress, because the commonest reasons why people get admitted is lung infections, urine infections, or of course a broken bone. People receiving dialysis, they also stay in bed longer periods. But I am saying that, for example, astronauts that went into space were super athletes. They also get deconditions. What about this old man or the old woman who was already deconditioned because of their aging process, what we call the frailty? How will this be reflected on their outcome? So when they go into the hospital, they're already kind of weak, let's use the word frail. And because they are frail, their bones, muscles are already quite soft. Soft in the sense that they're pretty much deconditioned. Now they lie in a hospital bed, and we have done a research around in Europe, and we found that the average stay in the hospital is between 10 to 12 days. Now that is pretty lot for an old man or an old woman who was no athlete before they went into bed. And since lying in bed is a model for spaceflight, I'm just saying we don't have to do that for the old people. They are lying in bed. So I'm saying we need to get these people out, because the moment they get out of bed, they will feel dizzy. And the moment they feel dizzy, they are afraid. So it's not only falling, but the fear of falls. It's a big problem. And this is what we are trying to address. And also not just from the patient level, but also from the level of the hospitals, making awareness of the doctors, nurses, social also workers who are involved, families, trying to make them aware that the person lying there is a human being and that we need to mobilize them as soon as possible.
It is indeed very interesting. While you were talking, I imagined that there is also a problem that astronauts and older people share, which are sleep problems or biological rhythms problems, which are in fact our research line. What would you think that are common points between your research and the problem of sleep in older people?
I think sleep is an area of is a very big area of research. That's an area I personally don't research in, but what I know is that if we talk about research in terms of how can we prevent the deconditioning, not just taking sleep as an example, but if you take, for example, how to prevent muscle loss, bone loss, we recommend exercises, we actually recommend for them cognitive training, doing some kind of training, and also nutritional. By doing these things, you're going to be able to mobilize people. But we also know one thing, talking about sleep, is that the longer you lie in bed, the more physically inactive you are, the more problems you will have with sleep. So even though I don't directly work in sleep, but I know that mobilizing these persons is important for them to be able to give them a good sleep as well.
Because probably a good sleep determines a good waking state.
Absolutely.
To end this little interview, I would like to ask you from a more global point of view, what do you think that are the challenge for our society facing the fact that we are an aging society?
I think this is not a challenge. This is a realistic life cycle. I am 51. When we talk about older persons, we are talking about people from 65 to 83. I'm not far away. You are still young, but you're also getting there. Yes. So this is a process that I think is going to be affecting all of us. And this is, I believe that just taking care of our parents, our grandparents who were actually responsible for guiding us, it's a moral issue, it's also a physiological issue, because I think it's not just enough to say, well, we have to look after them. It is also important that by trying to understand their challenges, we are also learning about our possible physiological degradation that is definitely coming. And that is why we work with social gerontologists who are responsible for not just people what are the events happening in the hospital, but also how do we extend that into the community. So what we do is that at the hospital level, we bring families, friends, older persons all together, what we call buddies, and they help these people, the old person lying in bed, to be able to go back into the communities and adapt the interventions that were given to them in the hospitals, like move fast, get out of bed, please don't lie in bed, try to do a lot of physical activity. Once they're getting back at home, they don't do this. So we need to mobilize the entire society. And by doing this, I think we are also helping our aging process. The young people will also understand. But there is one aspect that I think we haven't even talked about. We keep on talking about physiological deconditioning. We must never forget that the people there, older persons are not just old. As we say, a lot of my friends who work in sociology and humanities say, I may be old, but I'm not redundant or obsolete. We must never forget that the old man or the old woman, apart from being our parents or grandparents, they have their own feeling. There's also about quality of life. How do you think they feel? if they have a broken bone and they cannot clean their own themselves, they are afraid. Will they be able to be integrated into the community? Will they be able to live alone? Will I be able to do my work? Will I be able to go to the shop and buy my things? So there is a big social dimension as well, what we call the quality of life. So while we concentrate on the physiology, which is our area, we must also not forget the psychology, or what we call the quality of life. Because an old man or an old woman who has feces around them and with people cleaning their private parts, they will lose the desire to live. And that will just bring down everything. And so I also work with one of our collaborators from Alma Mater Europea, which is in Maribor in Slovenia. They have developed a program of social gerontology. In other words, what to do with the patients once they go from the hospital to homes. And I'm saying, why do we say from the hospital? Why not while in the hospital? So I work together. While we work with the medical aspects of things, we also bring in the social gerontologists to help us right from the hospital to continue as a way of life. And that is the reason why we collaborate with Alma Mater Europea, which has an excellent social gerontology program. So from medical side, we do in Graz, and we really look forward to this excellent collaboration with your university, because I was just informed yesterday that your rector has an interest in aging, and this is something that they really want to look forward to. So I'm almost sure this is not the last time you will see me here.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Nandu, I really appreciate you coming
Yeah.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you will be, of course, welcome
Yes.
any other time.
Daniel, recién conversabas con el doctor Goswami acerca de las investigaciones que viene desarrollando. Quisiera preguntarte cómo te contactaste con él, cómo lo conociste y qué futuras investigaciones o proyectos de investigación están pensando.
Nos contactamos con Nandu a partir de nuestro común interés en lo que es la fisiología espacial. El área de investigación de Nandu tiene que ver con el estudio de las caídas y del miedo a las caídas en adultos mayores. Lo que sucede es que los astronautas, si bien son atletas consumados, cuando vuelven del espacio sufren toda una serie de cambios fisiológicos que hacen que sean un excelente modelo para estudiar en personas, por otro lado, sanas, lo que puede llegar a pasar en un adulto mayor. Y en ese sentido, nosotros compartimos el interés en lo que sería la fisiología espacial. Nosotros estudiamos lo que es fisiología del sueño y de los ritmos biológicos. Y ese es otro tema que comparten los astronautas y las personas mayores, las alteraciones del sueño. Las medicaciones para dormir es una de la primera o la segunda fármaco que consumen los astronautas en el espacio. Los problemas para dormir son un problema grave. Los astronautas que están en la Estación Espacial Internacional tienen 16 amaneceres y 16 atardeceres con una carga de trabajo diaria muy grande, con lo cual sus ritmos biológicos tienden a desorganizarse, que es un poco lo que pasa también en los adultos mayores. De ahí nuestro interés común. Estamos actualmente tratando de buscar puntos en común para iniciar una colaboración en conjunto con el Hospital de Clínicas José de San Martín de la UBA y el Instituto FLENI de Buenos Aires en el estudio de patologías como el deterioro cognitivo mínimo, enfermedad de Alzheimer, enfermedad de Parkinson.
Daniel, más allá de esta cooperación internacional, ¿qué otros proyectos se están desarrollando en tu laboratorio?
Nosotros estamos investigando el proyecto de envejecimiento del cual hablábamos, que se inició bastante tiempo atrás de la colaboración con Nandu. Este es un proyecto que busca estudiar sueño y ritmos biológicos en colaboración, como mencionábamos, con el Hospital de Clínicas y FLENI. Este proyecto es llevado adelante por Carolina Abulafia, becaria del Instituto, y Natividad Olivar en el Hospital de Clínicas y el equipo del doctor Salvador Guinjoan en FLENI, y buscando incluso algunas colaboraciones con la enfermedad de Parkinson, con el equipo dirigido por el doctor Marcelo Merelo. Después tenemos proyectos en la Antártida, en los cuales estamos investigando cómo afecta la noche polar, 4 meses de oscuridad continua en los ritmos biológicos. Este es un proyecto en conjunto con
el Ejército Argentino y el Instituto Antártico Argentino. En este proyecto participaron los doctores Cuyuli, Folgueira, y del Instituto Antártico la doctora Marta Barbarito, y es llevado adelante por una becaria nuestra, que es la licenciada Camila Tortelo. Por otro lado, tenemos un fuerte interés en lo que es fatiga y sueño, cómo el sueño afecta a la fatiga, el rendimiento, el riesgo de sufrir un accidente. Recordemos que estar 17 horas despierto equivale a tener un nivel de alerta similar al de una persona ebria. Este proyecto es llevado adelante por otra becaria nuestra, que es la licenciada Janina Belone. En todas estas iniciativas, proyectos y colaboraciones también cuento con la inestimable colaboración del investigador asistente Santiago Plano, investigador del CONICET, que trabaja con nosotros.
Bueno, Daniel, muchas gracias por este tiempo. Los esperamos en una próxima emisión de Index. Muchas gracias.